Oh, I always figured that when you get old, the world would slow down a little for you. But there I was, 68 years old, retired from running my little trucking business, and life still had a way of hitting me out of nowhere. That Thursday afternoon, the air in my San Antonio office was thick with Texas heat. My old Ford pickup simmered outside the window, and the paperwork for a lost client contract sat scattered across my battered oak desk. It should have been a day for regrets. But then my phone rang, and everything changed. It was my son Lucas. 3 years of silence, all because of one blown-up argument about money and pride. I nearly let it ring to voicemail, but something in my chest made me answer. "Dad?" His voice was hesitant, softer than I remembered. "Dad, it's me. I know it's been a long time. I messed up. Look, Emily and I would love to have you for dinner. We're settled in now, and we've missed you." Emily, my daughter-in-law, hadn't spoken to me since the fallout either. But hearing Lucas ask, after all that stubborn silence, made my heart ache and swell at the same time. Maybe I was getting too sentimental in my old age, but I'd been wishing for this call for years. "When?" I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. "How about this Saturday? We live out in River Oak Ridge now. It's not far, I'll send you the address." "All right, son," I said, the words catching in my throat. "I'll be there." He sounded relieved, and before I knew it, we were talking about old times. He even mentioned how much Emily had improved her cooking, how she wanted me to try her brisket recipe. By the end of that call, the stress of losing that big contract felt like nothing. Family was always more important than any business deal. After hanging up, I pulled out the old Samsonite suitcase my late wife Hazel and I used for vacations, packed my good shirt, the watch I'd saved for special occasions, and even grabbed a bottle of her favorite perfume, for Emily. I wanted to make a good impression, start over right. Friday morning, I set out early. The drive from San Antonio up to River Oak Ridge took a couple of hours, but the roads were clear. The radio played old country tunes Hazel would have liked, and for the first time in years, I felt hopeful about seeing my son again. I rehearsed what I'd say if we started talking about the past, about money, about that old argument. I just wanted a peaceful dinner. Maybe I could even see the grandkids. As I rolled into River Oak Ridge, I marveled at how much life had changed. The old neighborhoods where Lucas learned to ride a bike were gone, replaced by fancy houses, big lawns, and private gates. His new address was at the end of a winding cul-de-sac shaded by pecan trees, the kind of place I never dreamed my family would end up. When I pulled up in front of the house, the first thing I noticed was the silence. No kids in the yard. No sound of dinner being made. I carried my gift bags, the watch for Lucas, the perfume for Emily, and rang the bell. Nothing. After a while, I walked around the house, hoping someone was just in the backyard. The pool was spotless, the patio furniture untouched. It looked like something out of a magazine, but there was not a soul in sight. I tried calling Lucas. Straight to voicemail. I tried Emily, but she didn't answer either. That's when the neighbor showed up, a wiry guy in his 50s named Frank. He was trimming hedges next door, sweat running down his face. He called out, his voice trembling. "Sir, you need to leave. I know who you are. Your son and his wife, they're not what they seem. They're dangerous." At first, I thought he was joking or confused. But the look in Frank's eyes told me he meant every word. "Get back in your truck and drive away. Don't eat anything here, don't drink. And don't let them see you if you can help it. I've seen too much, and I'd never forgive myself if I didn't warn you." My hands shook as I thanked him, not sure whether to laugh it off or start running. In my mind, I replayed every argument, every time Lucas had been desperate for money. Had something changed in him? Was this neighbor just a busybody, or was there something truly wrong? Standing there on that perfect Texas street, clutching my wife's perfume and a bottle of whiskey meant for a family celebration, I felt more alone than I had in years. Just then, a black Mercedes rolled slowly up the driveway. And in that moment, I had to decide: trust my instincts and run, or stay and hope that the son I'd raised was still in there somewhere. The Mercedes came to a smooth, silent stop beside my beat-up Ford. I wiped my hands on my jeans, forcing a smile, trying to hide the tremor in my fingers. The doors opened in unison, and out stepped Lucas and Emily, dressed in the kind of clothes you only see on TV. Emily's smile was bright, but her eyes flickered to the neighbor, Frank, who disappeared behind his hedges as fast as he could. "Dad! We're so sorry!" Lucas called out, rushing up the walkway. "Traffic out of Austin was a nightmare. Did you wait long?" I shrugged, hiding my nerves. "Not too long. Place looks beautiful, son. Emily, you're looking well." I handed over the perfume. She hugged me, cool and perfumed, a little too rehearsed. Lucas grabbed my bag before I could protest. "Come on inside, Dad. We've got dinner nearly ready, and you have to see the house." Inside, the air conditioning was cranked up high, the smell of roast brisket drifting from the kitchen. The living room looked like a magazine spread: leather couches, massive TV, modern art on the walls. All those years of hard work, and here my boy was, living a life I barely recognized. "Sit, make yourself at home," Emily chirped. She poured me a glass of iced tea before I could ask, her smile never slipping. "Let's get you cooled off. I'll set the table." I thought about Frank's warning as I sipped the tea. The glass was sweating in my hand, cool and sweet. For a second, I almost laughed at my own paranoia. Then I remembered Frank's pale face and the way his voice cracked. "Don't eat or drink anything." I set the glass down, making an excuse about needing water instead. Emily didn't bat an eye, just bustled back to the kitchen. Lucas sat beside me, his leg bouncing nervously. "Dad," he started, "I'm glad you came. I know it's been a while. I've missed this, you and me, just talking." I wanted to believe him. I wanted the old Lucas back, the one who helped me fix up the truck or watched Cowboys games on Sunday. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that there was a script he was following. "You did good, son," I said quietly. "All this, it's more than I ever dreamed for you." He looked away, jaw clenched. "It's not all as perfect as it seems, Dad. Sometimes people have to make choices." Before I could ask what he meant, Emily reappeared, beaming, and called us to dinner. The table was set with the finest china, candles flickering even though it wasn't dark yet. Emily had gone all out: roast brisket, mashed potatoes, homemade rolls. I sat at the head of the table, place of honor. Lucas poured wine for himself and Emily, but only water for me. "Doctor's orders," he joked, nudging the glass closer. Emily served me a heaping plate, watching a little too closely as I picked up my fork. I made a show of eating, but my stomach nodded. The neighbor's warning echoed in my mind with every bite. "So, Dad, how's retirement?" Emily asked sweetly, her gaze flicking to Lucas. I shrugged. "Keeps me busy. Still see some of the old crew play cards. It's quiet." I steered the conversation toward safer topics: grandkids, vacations, old family stories. Lucas answered, but always with that edge of nervousness, like he was waiting for the right moment to say something important. Halfway through dinner, I excused myself to the bathroom. In the hallway, I glanced at the family photos: Lucas and Emily on vacation in Cancun, their wedding day, a few pictures of Lucas as a kid, none with me or Hazel. It stung, but I tried to let it go. In the bathroom, I splashed water on my face, trying to clear my head. My mind raced with half-formed suspicions. Why did Frank say they were dangerous? What had he seen that I hadn't? When I came back, Emily was serving dessert, apple pie, my favorite. She cut me a large slice, her hand steady. but her eyes locked on mine. "You have to try this, Grandpa. I made it just for you." Lucas smiled, but his hand shook as he lifted his fork. "To family," he said, raising his glass. I hesitated, my fork hovering over the pie. "Maybe later," I said. "That brisket filled me up." A silence fell, tense and heavy. Emily's smile faltered. Lucas looked at me, eyes hard to read. Then, from outside came the sound of a car door slamming. Emily's face drained of color. Lucas stood abruptly. "Did you invite anyone else, Dad?" I shook my head, heart pounding. Through the window, I saw Frank, the neighbor, standing at the edge of the yard, his arms crossed, staring straight at the house. Behind him, a sheriff's cruiser rolled slowly down the street. Lucas cursed under his breath. Emily's fork clattered to her plate. Something was about to happen, and for the first time since arriving, I wondered if I'd ever make it out of River Oak Ridge alive. The sheriff's cruiser idled at the curb, sunlight glinting off its badge. I watched from the dining room, pie untouched, while Lucas and Emily exchanged nervous glances. Emily was the first to recover, her hostess' smile snapping back in place like a mask. "I'll go see what's happening outside," she said, her voice just a touch too high. "Lucas, can you help me for a second?" Lucas hesitated, but followed her into the kitchen, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts and a half-finished plate. Out the window, I saw Frank talking to the sheriff. He was waving his arms, animated and insistent, his face pale but determined. The officer wrote something in a little notepad, eyes flicking from Frank to the house. I strained to listen, but their voices were muffled by the thick, expensive glass. I thought about what Frank had said, about danger, about never eating or drinking anything in this house. My throat tightened. Was I just an old fool, seeing ghosts where there were only shadows? Or was something truly wrong? When Lucas came back, his hands were shoved deep in his pockets, jaw clenched tight. "Everything all right?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Just the neighbor, Dad. He's always causing trouble," Lucas muttered. "Says our dog barked at him. You know how people are in these neighborhoods, always looking for drama." But we didn't have a dog. That single detail made my skin crawl. Emily returned, still flustered, and the three of us sat in tense silence, pretending everything was normal. The pie grew cold on my plate. Lucas broke the silence first, forcing a laugh. "Dad, let me show you the backyard. We put in a fire pit, it's real nice in the evenings." I nodded, eager for any excuse to leave the claustrophobic dining room. Outside, the air was heavy with the smell of cut grass and blooming crepe myrtle. The patio was perfect, but too clean, too staged, as if nobody ever really lived here. A new set of patio chairs surrounded the fire pit, logs stacked neatly, but not a single scorch mark. As Lucas launched into a rehearsed-sounding tour, I kept an eye on the street. The sheriff's cruiser had driven away, but Frank still lingered at the edge of his yard, arms folded, watching us closely. "Nice setup," I said, but my voice was distracted. "You two have really made a life here." Lucas's smile faltered. "We try. It's not easy sometimes." Before I could ask what he meant, Emily appeared at the sliding door, calling for Lucas. He excused himself, leaving me alone in the evening heat. I took the chance to wander a little, eyes searching for anything out of place. Near the garbage bins, I spotted a discarded prescription bottle. The label was faded, but I made out Emily's name. My pulse skipped. Why hide medicine out here, behind the house? I slipped the empty bottle into my pocket. Back inside, the mood had changed. Emily was tense, moving quickly between kitchen and living room, checking her phone, glancing at me when she thought I wasn't looking. Lucas was quieter now, avoiding my eyes. "Everything all right, kids?" I asked, using the old word out of habit. Lucas cleared his throat. "We've had a rough couple of months, Dad. Some financial stuff. You know how it is, taxes, home repairs, bills. My mind flashed back to the day he'd asked me for money. I remembered the desperation in his voice, the way he'd shouted about needing a chance. I told him to work harder, to save, to build something on his own. Maybe I'd been too harsh. Things'll turn around, I said quietly, meaning it, though doubt gnawed at my gut. Just keep doing what's right. That's all anyone can ask. Emily set down her phone with a clatter. It's not always so simple, Grandpa. Sometimes you have to take what you need in this world, or you get left behind. Lucas shot her a warning look, but she just stared at me, her jaw set. For a moment, I saw something cold behind her eyes, something that made me think of Frank's words again. Anyway, Emily said, her smile returning, let's get back to dessert. I made coffee, Grandpa, just the way you like it. She slid a steaming mug in front of me. I stared at the dark liquid, my reflection trembling on the surface. Don't eat or drink anything. I think I'll stick to water, I said, forcing a smile. That brisket was plenty for me tonight. Lucas let out a shaky laugh, but Emily just nodded, her face unreadable. Silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. I excused myself, claiming I needed to call an old friend. In the hallway, I pulled out my phone, fingers shaking. I considered calling the sheriff, telling him about Frank's warning, about the prescription bottle, about the way Lucas and Emily seemed to be acting out some strange script. But what would I say? That I felt unsafe at my own son's table? That I suspected something sinister because a neighbor said so? I stepped outside to clear my head. The Texas twilight painted the sky gold and lavender, but the street felt colder than ever. Across the way, Frank caught my eye and mouthed, "Be careful." I nodded, heart pounding. As I stood there, the wind picked up, rustling the pecan trees and carrying with it the distant sound of sirens. The sirens faded, but their echoes stayed with me, bouncing around in my head as the sun dipped below the horizon. I walked slowly back to the house, the lights now glowing warm and golden, but the comfort they once promised had vanished. My chest felt tight, not just from the tension, but from the heavy realization that this wasn't just family drama. Something dark was lurking beneath the surface. When I stepped inside, Emily was alone in the kitchen, humming a soft, tuneless melody as she scrubbed plates. I watched her for a moment, studying the way her jaw clenched, the way her eyes darted to the back window as if expecting someone. Lucas appeared at my side. "Everything all right out there, Dad?" I forced a smile. "Just needed some fresh air. Place is beautiful at night." He nodded, but didn't quite meet my gaze. "Glad you like it. Emily's worked hard making it feel like home." I nodded, but my attention snagged on the prescription bottle still in my pocket. I thought about the warnings from Frank, the half-truths at dinner, the neighbor's pale face as he'd whispered, "Don't drink anything." Emily broke the silence, sliding over a plate of pie she'd kept warm. "You never got to your dessert, Grandpa. Have some, please." She poured me a fresh mug of coffee, pushing it toward me with a too bright smile. My stomach twisted. I remembered how Hazel used to smile when she brought me coffee, real warmth, not this strange, rehearsed act. "Maybe just a bite," I managed, picking up the fork with trembling fingers. I took the tiniest nibble, pretending to chew, then set the fork down. "You kids spoil me. Don't know how I'll go back to my own cooking after all this." Lucas tried to laugh, but it came out flat. Emily's knuckles were white on the mug as she stared at me. The air in the kitchen felt thick, like the pressure before a thunderstorm. "Grandpa," Emily said quietly, "how long are you staying in town?" I shrugged. "Just the weekend. Maybe drive out to the coast, see some of the old fishing spots." I tried to sound casual, but every muscle in my body was tense. She nodded, her lips pressed tight. Lucas stared at his hands, not saying a word. Suddenly, the front door rattled, someone knocking. Not loudly, but steady and urgent. Emily's face strained of color. Lucas stood up so quickly his chair nearly toppled. "I'll get it," I said before either of them could react. As I moved down the hall, I could feel their eyes burning holes in my back. I opened the door to find Frank standing there, breathing hard, eyes wild. "Sir, I know you don't know me, but you need to listen. Please come outside with me right now. Don't eat, don't drink. They're planning something." His voice shook. "You have to leave with me, now." My heart pounded in my chest, but I kept my voice low. "Frank, what are you talking about?" He glanced over my shoulder, voice barely above a whisper. "I saw them buy chemicals, stuff that's not for cleaning. And last year, the man who lived here before you, his daughter died after visiting. Everyone thought it was natural causes, but it wasn't. There was money involved." I looked at Frank, his hands shaking. "Do you have proof?" He shook his head, tears starting to build in his eyes. "No, but I know what I saw. Please, sir. You don't want to end up like the last guy." Behind me, Lucas appeared in the hallway. "Everything all right, Dad?" I forced a smile, putting a steady hand on Frank's shoulder. "Just talking with a neighbor about fishing spots. You know, reminiscing." Frank nodded, but I could feel the fear in him. Lucas watched us both, suspicion flickering in his eyes. "Come back in, Dad. It's getting cold," Lucas said, his tone firm. I stepped inside, but before closing the door, I squeezed Frank's hand. "Thank you," I whispered. Back in the kitchen, Emily was wiping the counters with feverish intensity, her hands moving so quickly she nearly knocked over a glass. She looked up, forcing a smile. "Is everything okay?" I sat down at the table, my mind racing. The pie, the coffee, the tension, Frank's desperation, it all pointed to one thing. I was not safe here. But I couldn't just run, not yet. I needed to be sure. I needed something solid, some evidence. I excused myself to use the bathroom, slipping the prescription bottle from my pocket, studying it under the pale light. The label was for a medication I didn't recognize, but the dosage was high, and the refill date recent. I took a picture of it on my phone, just in case. As I left the bathroom, I heard Lucas and Emily whispering in the kitchen. Their voices were low and urgent, but I caught fragments. "He's getting suspicious. What if he tells someone? We have to do it tonight." A chill ran through me. My mind snapped into sharp focus, all the fog of grief and confusion clearing away. I was in danger, real, life or death danger. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, speaking in a low, calm voice. "This is Charles Bennett at 312 Magnolia Lane, River Oak Ridge. I believe my son and daughter-in-law are trying to poison me. Please send someone quickly." I hung up and slipped the phone back into my pocket just as Lucas appeared in the hallway, face pale, jaw clenched. "Dad, why don't you come back to the table? Emily's made more coffee." I nodded, but inside, I was counting every second until help arrived. Back at the table, Emily was pouring fresh coffee, her hand steady now, too steady. Lucas stood behind her, arms folded, blocking the exit to the hallway. The house, once so big and open, now felt like a cage. "Come on, Dad, you barely touched your pie," Lucas said, voice too friendly to be real. "Emily made it special for you." "I appreciate it," I said, my voice calm, even though my heart hammered in my chest. I glanced at the clock on the microwave. 10 minutes since I'd called for help. How long would it take for the police to get here? Emily smiled, but her eyes were cold as Texas marble. "You always said nothing beats a home-cooked meal, right, Grandpa?" She pushed the coffee closer. I reached for my mug, then faked a cough, covering my mouth with my hand. "Sorry, dry throat," I mumbled. "Maybe some water instead." I stood up, heading for the sink before either could stop me. My hands shook as I filled a glass, my mind racing for an excuse, any way to buy time. From the corner of my eye, I saw Emily take my mug and dump the coffee down the drain, moving fast, too fast, before Lucas saw her slip the cup under the cabinet. I watched her movements, careful, precise. She wiped her hands on a towel, shot a nervous glance at Lucas. "Everything okay?" Lucas asked, sounding like a man who didn't know which way was up anymore. Emily nodded, too quickly. "Just a little jumpy, that's all." I sipped my water, feeling sweat bead on my neck. In that moment, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the kitchen window. I looked every bit my age, gray hair, tired eyes, lines etched deep by years of hard work and worry. But behind those eyes was something they'd forgotten: experience. I'd survived worse than this. I wasn't about to give up now. Suddenly, the house phone rang, a shrill, jarring sound in the tense silence. Emily nearly jumped out of her skin. Lucas moved to answer it, then stopped, looking at me. "Expecting a call, Dad?" "Nope," I lied, keeping my expression neutral. Emily grabbed the phone, voice shaky. "Hello?" Her back stiffened. Yes, he's here." "No, he's fine." She turned, eyes wide, covering the receiver with her hand. "It's for you, Grandpa. Your friend Frank." I took the phone, pressing it to my ear. Frank's voice was barely above a whisper. "Hang in there, Mr. Bennett. The sheriff's on his way, but Lucas and Emily are watching. Just act normal. Don't let them out of your sight." I felt a strange calm settle over me. "Thank you, Frank. I owe you one." I hung up, setting the phone down with a soft click. Lucas and Emily stared at me, both pale now, both jumpy. "Frank wanted to check on that fishing trip," I said, shrugging. "He worries too much." Lucas tried to laugh, but it sounded strangled. Emily fiddled with a napkin, twisting it tight. A heavy silence fell over the kitchen, broken only by the ticking of the clock on the wall. Suddenly, Emily stood up. "I'll get dessert plates," she said, voice tight. She hurried to the pantry, leaving Lucas and me alone. For a moment, it was just the two of us, father and son, but a lifetime apart. "Dad," Lucas said, his voice hoarse, "did you ever feel like you'd do anything for family? Even something you never thought you could?" I looked at him, seeing the scared little boy he used to be, and the desperate man he'd become. "Son," I said, "doing what's right for family never means hurting them. That's not love. That's fear. That's desperation." He dropped his gaze, jaw working. "You always thought I was weak," he whispered. "No, Lucas. I thought you could be better than me. I just wanted you to be happy, not rich, not powerful, just good." He blinked, as if seeing me for the first time in years. Emily returned with plates, setting them down with a clatter. "Eat, Grandpa. Please." Her hands were trembling now. I glanced out the window. In the distance, blue and red lights flashed, reflected off the manicured lawns of River Oak Ridge. My heart leaped. Lucas saw the lights too. His eyes widened, and he lunged for me, grabbing my wrist hard. "What did you do?" he hissed. "Did you call someone?" Emily froze, her eyes wild. No, this isn't happening." "It's over," I said, voice steady. "It's done, kids. The police are here. Whatever you were planning, stop now, before it's too late." Lucas let go, his shoulders slumping. Emily backed into a corner, eyes wide with panic. The knock on the front door was like thunder. "Sheriff's Department! Open up!" I stood up, moving slowly, never taking my eyes off the two people I'd once loved more than anything. I walked to the door and opened it, relief flooding my chest as two officers stepped inside. "Mr. Bennett?" one officer said, looking from me to Lucas and Emily. "We need to ask a few questions." Behind me, Emily started to cry. Lucas stared at the floor, defeated. As the officers led us all to the living room, I finally let myself breathe. I had survived the longest night of my life. We sat in the living room, the world outside still pulsing with the blue and red lights of the sheriff's cruisers. Lucas slumped on the couch, head in his hands. Emily paced behind him, her eyes wild, mascara streaked down her cheeks. The two officers moved carefully, their hands on their belts, one eye on me, one on the kids. The lead officer, a tall woman with gray streaks in her ponytail, knelt in front of me. "Mr. Bennett, are you hurt? Can you tell me exactly what happened tonight?" My voice was steadier than I felt. "I believe my son and daughter-in-law tried to poison me. My neighbor Frank warned me, and I found some things that didn't add up. They kept pushing food and drinks I didn't ask for. And I overheard them say they needed to do something tonight before I could talk." Lucas started to protest, but Emily cut him off. "It was his idea," she blurted, her voice shrill. "I didn't want to, but Lucas said we needed the money, that you'd never help us otherwise." Lucas's head shot up, eyes burning. "Emily, stop it. Don't drag me down with you. You were the one who got the pills. You said it was the only way." The officers shared a glance, then separated them, questioning each in turn. I sat back, exhausted, my heart heavy with sorrow more than fear. How had it come to this? I'd raised Lucas to be honest, hard-working. Hazel would never have believed it, her only son, desperate enough to kill his own father for money. In the kitchen, another officer collected evidence. I watched him empty the trash, find the empty prescription bottle I'd stashed in my pocket earlier, and carefully photograph everything in sight. He checked the coffee pot, the pie plates, every bottle under the sink. When he held up a small, nearly empty vial marked with a pharmacy label and a red warning sticker, my blood ran cold. It matched the medication I'd found. Frank, still hovering outside, was finally let in by the deputies. He looked shaken, but relieved. "Thank you for listening, Mr. Bennett. I couldn't just stand by." I nodded, my voice thick with emotion. "You saved my life, Frank. I mean that." The officer asked me to recount everything, from the phone call inviting me to dinner, to the neighbor's warning, to the strange behavior at the table. I told it straight, trying to stick to the facts, but emotion kept catching in my throat. I was embarrassed, angry, humiliated, and yet strangely proud that I'd kept my head when it mattered. As the night wore on, the truth came tumbling out. Emily confessed first. She'd ordered the prescription under a friend's name, hoping to use the drugs to make it look natural. Lucas insisted he'd only wanted to scare me into signing over some of my retirement accounts, not to kill me outright. But the evidence said otherwise. The officers gathered the pie, the coffee mug, and several containers from the pantry for testing. One officer quietly told me that if I'd had more than a few bites, or a full cup of coffee, I probably wouldn't have woken up the next morning. My hands shook as I signed my statement. I glanced at Lucas, remembering his first steps, his high school graduation, his wedding day. I remembered the promise I made Hazel at her funeral, to take care of our boy, no matter what. But there are some things a father can't protect his son from, especially not from himself. As dawn broke outside, a detective arrived to take over the investigation. The house felt smaller, emptier. Emily sobbed quietly, her hands cuffed in her lap. Lucas just stared out the window, eyes hollow, as if he'd already left this world behind. Frank sat beside me, offering quiet company. "Sometimes family isn't who you're born with," he said, his voice gentle. "Sometimes it's the people who stand by you when it counts." The detective approached, his voice low and kind. "Mr. Bennett, you can come down to the station later for more questions, but you're free to go home now. We'll get you a ride." I looked at the house, all the memories, the good and the terrible, now twisted up with betrayal and fear. "I think I'll just sit here a while longer," I said. "Catch my breath." He nodded, understanding. "Take your time." Frank waited with me as the sun rose over River Oak Ridge, its light falling over a world changed forever. By the time the sun was up over River Oak Ridge, the house felt completely different. All that polished luxury, marble countertops, leather chairs, spotless floors, none of it seemed to matter anymore. The only thing left was the echo of voices, the weight of decisions, and the truth that sometimes family can break your heart worse than any stranger. The sheriff's deputies led Lucas and Emily out separately. I watched from the window, numb, as my only son climbed into the back of a cruiser without looking back. Emily glanced over her shoulder, her face a mask of regret and exhaustion. For a moment I wanted to run out, to beg them both to just tell me it was all a misunderstanding. But there are some things you can't unsee. Some things you can't forgive, no matter how much you love. Frank stayed with me, silent, until the last patrol car left the block. The quiet that settled over the house was nothing like peace. It was the hush after a storm, full of broken branches and battered hopes. I thanked Frank, told him again he'd done the right thing. He shook my hand, the grip of a man who understood what it meant to carry burdens alone. I walked through the house one last time. Every photo, every chair, every familiar shadow took on new meaning. There was the hallway where Lucas played with his trucks, the kitchen hazel filled with laughter and the smell of cinnamon. But all those memories felt distant now, as if I was looking at someone else's life. The detective returned mid-morning to drive me home. "Do you have anyone waiting for you?" he asked kindly, as I packed my things. I shook my head. "No, but I'll be all right." He offered his card anyway, in case I needed to talk. The ride back to San Antonio was long and quiet. My mind replayed every moment of that night, the warnings, the tense conversation, the knowledge that I'd come so close to never seeing another sunrise. Somewhere outside New Braunfels, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Just tired. Just sad. I spent the next weeks answering questions for detectives, talking to lawyers, and filling out paperwork for the district attorney. Frank called me sometimes, just to check in. We started meeting for coffee once a week at a little diner near the park. He never brought up that night unless I did, and when I finally thanked him for saving my life, he just shrugged. "I'd want someone to do the same for me," he said. News about the case spread through the community. Some neighbors avoided me, embarrassed by what had happened. Others left casseroles on my porch, their way of saying, "We're sorry." I donated most of the food to the local shelter. Eating felt hard for a while. Lucas and Emily's trial was quick. There was enough evidence for the jury to see the truth. The judge's words felt final and cold: attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud. I watched my son stand up, tall but empty-eyed, and listened as he apologized. "I lost my way, Dad," he said. "I'm sorry." The words hurt more than anything he'd done. Emily never looked at me again. After the verdict, I stood outside the courthouse in the Texas sunlight. Frank joined me, hands in his pockets, watching the cars roll by. "So, what now?" he asked. I looked out over the city I'd worked in all my life. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe I'll try fishing again. Maybe I'll fix up the old truck. Maybe I'll just take things one day at a time." Hazel's photograph still sits on my mantel at home, her eyes gentle and wise as ever. Sometimes, on quiet nights, I talk to her. I tell her I'm doing my best. I tell her I wish I could have saved Lucas from himself. But I also tell her I survived, that I'm grateful for every sunrise, even the lonely ones. River Oak Ridge became just another place on the map, a memory, both good and bad. The scars from that night will never fully heal, but I've learned something: family is about more than blood. It's about trust, about kindness, about standing by the people who need you when it matters most. I started volunteering at the community center, helping other seniors who felt alone or afraid. I shared my story, sometimes in bits and pieces, to remind them that you can live through even the hardest betrayals and still find meaning. Frank and I fished together that spring, sitting quietly at the riverbank, casting lines into the muddy water. We never caught much, but sometimes, just sharing the silence was enough. If you're reading this, maybe you've lost someone, too, maybe not to violence, but to anger, distance, or pride. Take it from an old man who's seen the worst and come out the other side. Life goes on. Forgiveness is hard, but survival is harder, and more beautiful than you think. So I keep living, keep hoping, and keep loving, in my own stubborn, ordinary way. The end.